Welcome to this week's episode of The Best Damn Coach. I am joined by a friend and colleague. We actually met in a mutual mentors community and kind of hit it off right away and like jiving back and forth on messaging and questions. And I could tell we were kind of operating at similar levels. So it's always nice to come into a community and just like build rapport very quickly. So I'm very excited to welcome Belinda Rosenblum to the show and excited that we get to sit down together for the next 30-ish minutes.
Fantastic. And I'm excited to be here. I love the work that you're doing, Amanda. It's really on all levels, on the framework, on the best damn coach. I feel like you're really providing such value to the world. So thanks for having
Well,
me on.
yeah, amazing. I would love for you to give a little context to our audience. And I was just, before we hit record, I was talking about that I very specifically invited her on the show to talk about money in January because I want to start planting seeds for you to think about how to really transition your mindset and the operations component around money. And Belinda is an expert in that. So give us some context on how did you get to this moment doing the work that you do now?
Oh gosh, it's a bit of a loaded question. But I'm gonna give
It
it as
always
close
is.
as I can. Like I'm gonna give you one sentence and it could be like the next half an hour. But the short of it is that after a corporate career in accounting and finance, I just really saw this need in the marketplace for financial coaching. And I started this business back in 2007 as a personal finance coach. And I did that for 12 years. And then I got to the point, and I think all my entrepreneurs will appreciate this, especially corporate turned entrepreneurs. I got really tired of telling my people who were in corporate, like, go get a raise, go get another job, get a promotion or start a side hustle. Whereas my entrepreneurs, I was like, you have an unlimited ability to make money. We don't need to be scarce and feel like we need to spend less than we make. We just need to go make more money. And so I actually turned the whole ship in 2019 of Own Your Money to help small business owners to be able to escape that reactive bank balance decision making where they don't really know where all their money went. They don't really know what they can afford. And they just feel really trapped most of the time because they don't understand their money. And I felt like it was this big opportunity where they were just leaving so much money on the table by not understanding how to make money work for them. And it was causing them to like feel unworthy and unsafe with money. And I really wanted to be the solution to be able to show them actually you can have so much power over your money when you can own it instead of feeling like it's owning you. Right. And so that's the opportunity that we have as business owners, particularly as female business owners, because we know that we can be good with money, but we often feel really stuck, especially around that like 100K mark, where sometimes the stuckness, honestly, that income ceiling can be anywhere from 50K to 250K a year. But essentially, they often can wing it to a certain point. And then once they get to that 50, 100K, it's like, wait a second, I actually need to create some planning. So I love this conversation, and I especially love it as we end a year and begin a new year because it's like, hey, the sky's the limit. What can we go create?
I love that, the context. I was frivolously have to show my sticky notes as you're talking. Just out of full transparency to everybody listening and to you too, I do not like canned questions on episodes at all
It's all
because it
good.
does not feel authentic. And so I love frivolously. If you ever see me looking down, if you're watching us on YouTube, that's because I'm taking notes because I want to ask real, juicy, real life, real human questions around what you're saying. But the first glaring thing is I don't know if you guys heard her, but she's been doing this. Did you say like 06, 07?
Yeah, 16 plus years I've been doing this.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you're an OG in the coaching world. Like you did online coach. Well, I'm just assuming. Were you when you were doing personal finance coaching? Were you virtual? You weren't virtual at that point, right?
I was both. So I started in person, even like people came to me there. So let me back it up. In 2007, there was no Zoom. Like
Yeah,
it,
that's what I
it
was saying.
may
I was
be
like,
hard
it
to
can't be
imagine.
on
Like
Zoom. Yeah.
it was either phone or it was in person, and people like came into my house and had like a home office, and we like did it there. I coached right there on the spot, like at my dining room table. It was like very much messy action at the time, and I would do in person workshops every month. So, and I would go and I would speak, and I actually had a TV show. I don't think you and I ever talked about this, but back in the
No,
day,
I didn't
if
know
if you
that.
guys really want a good laugh, and
Celebrity status.
on YouTube, go search Money on Your Mind and my name. You might need to search my maiden name. It's Fuchs, Fuchs. Anyway, and I interviewed some really amazing people. I went on site to conferences, and but a lot of it was offline. But then as we started to at least want to expand, and I would do like a lunch keynote in Las Vegas, I would get clients that wouldn't be around here, and then it would just be on the phone. So, but literally, I was on the 5 o'clock news the day of the federal bailout back in 2008. So, yeah,
That's so crazy.
I know,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, as I heard that time frame, I was really thinking you've seen the industry shift so much. And I know our
Mm,
audience is a mixed bag as far as where they're leveraging their business growth, whether it's online or offline or a combination of both. But I
mhm,
even go back to the beginning of my business, which was 2018-ish, and I was always online because my kids were babies and it just made the most sense. But I even joke like the
mhm.
only coaching I did originally was email coaching. Like I never saw a real human being in real life. Like I could run into my clients at the grocery store and never know who they were because we just, other than before and after pictures, I would know their face. But I
Yeah,
just think
like
it's so cool that you've really, kept with the industry and surfaced as an expert. And you do so many great speaking events inside, really well known finance spaces and opportunities.
mhm.
And I think it just says a lot about you that you have allowed, the market to shift and continue to stay where you're at.
Totally. And I'll say, so back in the day in 2007, there was no coaching. Like my family and friends and colleagues actually had a bit of an intervention for me in my first 6 months of my business because they were like, why? And even entrepreneurship wasn't
Yeah,
what it
trendy.
was then, like it was now, right? They were like,
Yeah.
why would you possibly want to leave a healthy six-figure job, right, to go and do your own business? It was like, it just didn't make sense. It was like the math didn't math to
Yep.
them. And now it's just like, we have so much more of an opportunity in this coaching space than we did then. Because when I told people I wanted to be a coach for people with their finances, they were like, why? Like, what would that do? And I was like, at the leading edge, I guess you could say, right, of doing this work. So, but it was interesting because there was definitely some education at the beginning of like, well, why would I want that? And how could you help me? And
Sure.
why would I pay $600 a month for that? And, some of the same stuff we deal with now, but at least it's much more widely accepted. So, yes, I am a bit of an OG in this space for
Love it.
sure. Better than a dinosaur. I'll take OG. So,
I will never call you a dinosaur. So let's get into
it's
the
all
juicy
good.
stuff because you said a couple things in there that I want to really call out. You mentioned that from your perspective, that sticking point, that tough transition sometimes shows up around the 100K mark or even previous to that at the 50K
Hmm.
mark.
Hmm.
What do you feel like contributes to people feeling stuck or not in control of their finances around that mark? Why does it happen at that
Hmm.
range?
Yeah, so a few different reasons. So one of them is that it's often very unscaled at that point, right? So it's very one to one, and at some point they literally just max out their hours that they can work, right? So right. So it's like that will naturally create a ceiling when you feel like, okay, I only have a certain number of hours, I'm only charging a certain amount, thus that formula creates the max that you can earn, right?
Hmm.
So until we start to get you out of an hourly model, because a lot of coaches start out hourly versus retainer or 6 month package or any of that. And this is honestly coaches, but also service providers. Like I have a tech assistant who's in our cash flow CO program. And as soon as we got her out of this, like still charging like the VA she was 3 years ago at 25 bucks an hour, when now her skill set as a tech VA should be more like 60 to 75 and actually be in a package of $2,500 to $3,000, like totally freed her up. Right. So I gave her some advice on what that package could be. She sold one between the time that she bought into the program and started the program. She had already paid off a third of the program.
Love it.
I
Talk
love it,
about
right?
immediate ROI.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we guarantee 100% ROI, right? And that's part of it. But so I think the stuckness comes from people maxing out their hours, right? So they're doing a lot of unscalable stuff. Second, I think that they're undercharging. So the math is mathing too low, right? Because they're still in this hourly mentality, but then they're also charging too low of an hourly rate. Oftentimes because people are coming from corporate and they're thinking, oh, I made 40 bucks an hour there, 80 bucks an hour there, but you were working for 2,000 hours a year. Like you were expected to work 40 hours at that billable rate. That is not the expectation for an entrepreneur, that every hour you're working is going to be billable, right?
Right.
So number one, but number two, we actually need to start to get you out of the mentality of being an hourly worker. Like you're not at McDonald's, like we're trying now instead to value the expertise and the transformation that you're providing, which takes you out of that hourly model entirely. And then the third thing, which gets to the winging it with money part that you were mentioning, is that when you're earning up to like your first $3,000 to $5,000 a month, you can kind of keep track of it on a little spreadsheet, or just kind of keep an eye on the
Hmm.
bank account, and it all kind of works out because you're not making that much anyway, right? So it's like maybe you make five, maybe you take home two and you transfer the two in your bank account. And like none of the numbers are very big, right? And so, or at least it feels that way. It feels like, wait, I'm working all this and why am I only paying myself 2 grand a month, right? If that. And then you need to pay taxes. So you might only be taking home 1,000 to 1,500, right? And so when you start to get to that 50K, 100K annual level, so something in that, like now we're graduating to like a 5 to 8K a month level, you're like, okay, wait a second now. The business is bringing in 100K. Why am I only getting 24K? Like this isn't right, And I mean, my story that I literally went through that. Like in my second year of business, I grossed $155,000 and I took home $2,348. Like the math didn't work
Didn't add up.
either,
Hmm.
it didn't. Everyone else was getting paid, but I wasn't getting paid enough. And that was my big wake up call. And at that time I was still doing personal finance, but I was believing the hype of just focus on revenue. And if you focus on revenue, it'll work out. It's like, no, that's BS.
Right.
And the biggest shift that I made once I got over the mentality of just make more, just work harder, because I was like, well, I've been working really hard and it hasn't worked yet. And 2 years ago, I made zero revenue and I took home zero. Now I'm making 155 and I'm taking home two. And I'm like, the system is broken. And that was my big aha of like, I need to create my own profit plan. And I think that that's an aha that people get around that 100K mark of like, it's not working for me to keep winging it because then I'm only getting scraps,
Yeah, for
and it's
sure.
like that, like, why am I doing this? Then we really start to doubt ourselves and we're like, am I really cut out for this? Should I go back and get a job? Like all those doubts start to rise to the top because we're like, is it worth it? It's like
Mhm.
we entrepreneurs are the only people that trade a 9 to 5 for a 24/7, right? And a lot of times we feel like a volunteer in an unintentional nonprofit. And I think that third piece of people feel stuck because they're still winging it. And so the up level for them is to actually create better financial systems, but more importantly, create a better financial strategy so that they can manage the money they're making and then plan ahead as to how
Yeah,
they want to be making their money and then where they want it to go.
I love that. And as you're talking, I mean, a lot of things come to my brain, but one of the things that I often hear and I fell into as well was I'm actually great at the math. I'm a science person. And
Mm-hmm.
yet when it came to my business, there was like an avoidance piece. And what I hear from a lot of clients is like, I'm not a numbers person. I just want to be good at business, right? Or something to that effect. So
Yeah.
for the person listening that has that mindset right now, I see you first off. But what do you say to them right now if they want to fall onto that default mindset of I'm not a numbers person, I'm not good with numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they did poorly in math class in high school and they still own that as part of their belief system, or
Yeah.
somebody that just feels like they want to give it all to somebody else. Like, what's your answer back to that?
Yeah. I get that a lot, right? Where we think, oh, I have a bookkeeper, right? Like, isn't that enough? Can't I just give it to them? But the challenge is that I want you to understand and be intentional about how you want to make your money because all revenue is not created equal, right? Different revenue streams are a different level of work for you. They're a different level of cost to acquire the customer. And I think what's happening is that when you give up your power to this bookkeeper who doesn't actually know your business, they don't actually know what you should be charging. They're usually more offline and don't really even understand the online world, right? It's just they can't be the one to advise you moving forward. I need to teach you how to do that. But here's the thing, it's not really a complicated math problem anymore, right? It's like we have nice spreadsheets, like people call my spreadsheets sexy inside the program, even, and then QuickBooks can be super helpful if we just need to set you up with a better system. If you're already, say, over that 50, 100K level and you want to grow and just have the system dialed in, but that you don't actually have to be good at math anymore. Like we have the math done for you. And I think when you can start to separate that fourth grader who was told that she wasn't good at math and realize, like, wait a second, do I want that fourth grade teacher to control my family's financial future right now? I hope the answer is no, is an emphatic no, right? And like, goddamn no, right?
Yes, please.
And exactly. And so when we can stop and realize, like, wait a second, maybe I don't even have to be good at math, right? Maybe like who says this is all math? Like the math I need you to be able to do is revenue minus expenses equals profit. Like basic addition and subtraction. It doesn't have to be super fancy. And I think that we have this idea that it's some really complicated formula. It doesn't have to be. Like our pay yourself calculator, even that's the gift that we give so that people can start to set data driven goals because so many people just feel like they're pulling numbers out of their butt.
Yeah.
Someone said on the call, yes, I just did a training call on Monday, and she was like, I don't know how to set goals. I just feel like I'm pulling numbers out of my butt all the time,
I think that's
you
so
know?
true in the beginning when people are talking about goals. Nobody's really taught them how to reverse engineer goals and what that will look like and what the expenses are going to be potentially to get you there.
Right, right, right. And so you don't know. You're like, I don't know, 50K sounds like a good goal, or 150K sounds like a good goal. And so instead, I want you to feel like that initial step feels data driven, right? Because you're saying, how much do you want to get paid? Like at a minimum, what do you want to make? And that's how I want you to start to step out of the I'm not good at math, my bookkeeper can handle it, and be like, wait a second, I don't want to give over my power as the CEO, as leading this business. And actually, you know how you talk about a baby business? This is a key
Yeah.
element of growing up that baby business to say, wait a second, I want to be a real business owner. In that context, I need to know my numbers and I need to have goals that aren't just pulled out of the air, but I need to have goals that actually will pay me what I want to get paid and will and still pay everybody else. So the way the calculator works is you literally just fill in how much do you want to get paid, what are the expenses of your business, and how much of a reserve or debt do we need to be paying off. You type in those three things, everything else is calculated for you. Plus, it will even show you how much revenue do you need to make all of that work, to make the math work. But then also, what would it take for you to double that income for yourself? Because usually people set kind of a low minimum. And so my point is like, well, how do we increase that? Right? How do we start to show you how to give yourself a raise? And so, yeah, so I just feel like it's so important to recognize how you have some of these old beliefs that are actually holding you back. A lot of people think like, I can't plan. That's another big one that I hear a lot, right? Like money can't be learned or profit can't be planned. And it's like, sure, we don't necessarily know what's going to happen in the future. I totally get it. As a high achiever, of course, I wish I could control everything, but we can't,
I wish
right?
I had the crystal ball. Yeah.
Exactly. Until then, um, we can set goals so that we have some direction. And then we can actually reverse engineer the behaviors and the marketing activities that we do to go and make that happen. And it used to be really funny. I remember I first started creating courses in 2012, like before people were doing courses either, which was tough, by the way, because there was no Kajabi, there was no Zoom, there was no none of that. They were teleseminar courses, if anybody remembers that. And where you had to like star 6 to unmute. It was like those days, right?
Oh my
I
gosh, I
know,
don't even
crazy.
know those days.
So anyway, I had this vision of creating a series of courses in 2012. And so I literally had like an outline and I had a goal of 20 people and I sold 20 people in. And so it's like if I had a goal of 10, I probably would have sold 10 people in. Like our goals are direct our activities. They direct our
Beautiful.
actions, right? And so then the second one, so I like had the outline, sold 20 people in February, delivered it in March. April, sold 20 people into the next one in the series, delivered it in April, published my book in June. Oh, yeah, I wrote a book too called Self Worth to Net Worth in that space. And then in September, I was like, okay, enough of these 20 goals. Let's go for more. I started to figure out collaborations even back in 2012, 11 years ago. And now I went for 65. We had 65, and so it was just like we literally direct the universe based on our goals. Feels a little
Yeah.
sounds a little bit woo, but it's like we are taking the actions to support that goal happening. We don't always get the goals for sure. Like, I don't know, I had a goal of 12. I had like a good, better, best. Good was 8, better was 12. I got 11. But like if I had no goals, I might have gotten 6, right? And I
Yeah.
might have just thought that was enough. And so I think that sometimes we don't want to set goals because we feel like it will somehow limit us or confine us or take the fun out of it. But actually, it makes your life so much easier because then you know what you're driving towards,
I
and you
hope
know
it.
what actions that you need to take.
I always say here is like goals inspire us into massive action. And if
Yes.
your goal has to be the driver. Otherwise, sneaky self-sabotage sets in. And I think it's less about, I think the reason we don't set goals is because what if we fail, right? What do we make it
Yeah,
mean when we fail? And
totally.
truthfully, I always say like, if you do it or you don't, you're still going to respond the same way. You're going to gather data, make adjustments, and then move forward, right? It's either you hit the
Yeah,
number or you didn't. And so a lot of that, it's just opportunity to, continually massage the mind muscle. Um,
yeah. I
so
love
I
that.
want to just,
You should
I
like
want
have
to say,
t-shirts,
I feel like I
goals
could have a whole
inspire us
line.
into massive
Yeah.
action. Yeah.
Yes.
It's so
Um,
true. Hmm.
you mentioned your pay yourself calculator. So you guys,
Hmm.
if you are excited about that, like I am, because I'm like, ooh, I want to try it. I want to see how it fits into ours. Be
Sure.
sure to head over to the show notes as well, and you can download the calculator. I'll also put a link into QuickBooks. Those are the two resources that Belinda mentioned. I use
Hmm.
QuickBooks. I recommend it to all my people. It's simple, especially in the beginning steps. Like if you can create that habit early on to just familiarize yourself, I think it's a great habit to have. It's a very expensive tool and it
Hmm.
could supplement Belinda's calculator quite nicely as
Very
well at,
expensive
getting
or
that.
inexpensive tool?
Did I say expensive?
Yeah.
I meant inexpensive. So
Okay,
good
just
catch.
checking.
It's
Yeah,
cheap,
no
you
rush.
guys. Don't be scared. It's inexpensive. So
Yeah.
yes, it's an easy way
It's
and you can
inexpensive, like comparatively, right? Compared to
yes.
like not having that information is very expensive, right?
Yeah,
And I
it's a
think that
waste of time and money.
yeah, we think that like ignorance is bliss. In this case, ignorance is actually very costly, right? It gets very
So
expensive for
true.
us when, sure, maybe if you're spending $1,000 on a bookkeeper or $1,000 on QuickBooks, it's like, but then you're having awareness of where your $100,000 is going, right? And
Totally.
so we're really trying to inspire you to not like trip over pennies on the way to dollars and to realize like you have such an opportunity here and you can allow your money to work for you once you actually understand it better. And that's, we start with the calculator, we head into cash flow CEO because I want all of you to turn from your baby business owner into the real CEO that understands her numbers.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
makes
that.
them work
So
for
that
her.
kind of leads me into the next. I have two more thoughts that I'd love to hit on.
Okay.
I love talking about tangible results, and we really kind of already alluded to go take action, download Belinda's calculator.
Mm-hmm.
And also for somebody that may not even feel like they're ready for that or might be intimidated or thinking, like I'm still far from that.
Mm-hmm.
What's the first like next best step for them that's tangible? If they're hearing you,
Mm-hmm.
they might be dabbling in this belief around revenue instead of profit. They're thinking, I really don't know, you know, this side of my business well. What's a next best tangible step for them?
Sure. So I think that you touched on a few things. So let me just sort of talk to them each.
Mhm.
So I think the initial piece is like if you are more of a baby business and kind of figuring this out, the first thing you have to do is separate business and personal. That's just like one of those things that sometimes people don't ever actually tell you to do, especially when you're starting it out. So you just use one main bank account for you or for your family, and then you have money from your business coming into that. Stop it literally today, right?
Good
Yeah.
advice.
So like don't
Simple.
pass
So
go. Right.
yes.
Simple. At least make sure that you have that, right? So that you have a separate business bank account and then a separate personal bank account. And then what you do is you use your business bank account to pay all of your business bills, to receive in all of the business money. If it's coming in via PayPal, then you transfer from PayPal into that account. If it's coming in on Venmo, even you transfer from Venmo into that account. Like that needs to be the repository of all of the business activity. And then when you want to pay yourself, you just transfer from that business bank account into your personal bank account, right? And ideally, you set up one more little account over there for taxes so that when you're doing the transfers from the business bank account, set a little bit of money aside for taxes and then
What
transfer.
percentage do you recommend specifically?
Um, So usually we say like 30% of profit or 15% of revenue. A lot of it depends on what your expenses are in your business,
Sure.
but that's just
Yeah,
sort
I
of
always
like
give the lump
general.
like 25% off the cuff, and then you can make adjustments as you grow year
Yeah,
to year.
that's on the revenue, off of revenue.
Your
Yeah,
revenue.
that's pretty conservative. Yeah. But it depends if you don't have a lot of expenses, then most of that revenue is coming down to your profit, right? Because it goes, and I want to touch on your revenue versus profit element, right? So
Yeah.
in the beginning, we're usually very focused on revenue. Like that's the driving force, right? Because it's like, I just want to make more money in the business. If the business can make more money, then I'm proving to myself, I'm validating the business concept. We're doing a lot of like throwing spaghetti on the wall. Let's see what's going to stick. And I totally get it. And it's often you're creating very unscalable offers when you're creating your first 3 to 5K. You're like, I'll just take all the money wherever I can get it. I'll take it.
I feel like you're talking to the old me right now. I'm feeling
Right.
like,
I'm
oh
talking to the
God.
old me too. Let me be real here. Okay.
Talking to the old.
You
That's why
know,
we're coaching. We're like, don't do what we did.
right. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
But to some extent, in the beginning, right? The key thing is it's in the beginning. Okay.
It's the
While you're
fastest way
figuring
to
this
make
out.
money.
Yeah.
I mean, reality is
Yeah. There's
one-to-one
no,
non-scalable offers are the fastest way
yeah,
to make cash.
and
And so
there's
it's
no
okay.
judgment, there's no
Yeah.
shame, there's none of that around it. Like it works for us and it can work for you to figure out who do you really want to help? What's the transformation that you're creating? What lights you up, right? And in the beginning, you just do say yes a lot because yes, you want the money, but also you're trying to figure out who you are, who you
Yeah.
want to serve, all those things, right? And then um, as we then grow, as we're getting to that 5 or 8K a month, that's when, to come back to the previous question about like why we feel stuck sometimes around there, is that that's when we need to get out of this revenue only mindset and say, wait a second, revenue isn't actually paying the bills. Profit is what's paying the bills. Right. And I need to understand that it's revenue less expenses equals profit. And that shift in terms of the next best step after you've done that, some of that other separation stuff, which hopefully people have done if they've been in business for a little while, then I want you to start to shift your focus to be willing to look at profit, right? And to make sure that, in fact, the plan, A, that you have a plan, and B, that the plan supports you getting paid what you want to get paid. Because there's little that's more frustrating to feel like you're working your tail off, and then at the end of the day, you're like, and I just got paid $500. Like,
Yeah.
really? Aren't there
Woo,
easier things I
yay.
could do for $500? Or
Yeah.
even a thousand
Yeah.
dollars? And so that's then where that next step can be the pay yourself calculator, and it's like, okay, create real data driven goals, like goals that are based on how much are your expenses, how much do you want to get paid, right? How much do you need to pay off debt or set up a reserve? And then you can start to literally see what are the levers that you could be pulling, right? And then we can start to have higher level conversations. But I think like initial steps, if you haven't separated it yet, do that. Otherwise, start with something like the calculator, start to focus on profit and recognize that that's really going to be your path to growth. I think it's this like
Yeah.
secret weapon that we don't even know that we have, right? And we spend so much time just focusing on revenue, but I feel like raising prices and managing your money is a much faster path to cash than like growing your list and just trying to
Totally agree.
make
Yes.
more,
That's
because
such
then
a
you just
great.
work more. And then like
Yeah.
when do you sleep? Like
Yes.
I mean, last year, without going into the whole thing because I think we're going to wrap it up soon, but last year I went through early stage breast cancer, right? And it was like a huge wake up call that was like I had already set up my business so that my business could make money when I wasn't working. But when I looked back at the year, I was like, oh my gosh, we grew 6%. A lot of people would not even have had a business if they had to take off as much time as I did. Because it was like first surgery, take off a week, second surgery, take off a week. Oh, wait, second surgery gets rescheduled, take off another week. Okay, then have treatments, take 3 naps a day. And I think that we feel like we have this illusion that we can just like work ourselves to the bone, but we just end up sacrificing ourselves at the altar of our business and burn ourselves out. And it was just a big wake up call of like, we say profit first. I'm like life first. Like, how do we, yes, I want you to make profit, of course. And yes, I have an adjusted Mike McCallowitz system, but what's most important here is that we are designing the business around the life that you want and helping you make money and really monetize your expertise and your energy in the best way possible. That's where I come in.
I mean, I don't feel like we need to. we'll just end right now.
Mic drop.
So well said. Boom, stamp, mic drop. I mean, it's just so spot on. And what she's offering today does not mean that you need to invest in anything else. It's just a matter of looking at what you have right now and getting more cognizant of the ins and outs and the puts and the takes, and really truly asking if your pricing is mirroring that. So, Belinda, I'd love for you to share
Mm.
how the audience can connect with you, ask you questions, download your calculator and all the good stuff. So would you mind sharing that with them?
Absolutely. So, okay, let's see. So, I would absolutely say start with the calculator, and we'll pop the link in the show notes. But short of it would be ownyourmoney.com/calculator. But use the show notes one, and that way I'll know that you came from Amanda and give you all the love from it. My favorite platform is Instagram. So, I am at Own Your Money on Instagram. Take a screenshot of this. I will reshare it, tag the two of us. We love to see that you're listening to this, like what your biggest takeaway was. Um, and then if you know that there's something here that's speaking to you, right? And you're like, okay, I'm raising the white flag, like I'm raising my hand. I know that I'm that business owner who's kind of stuck, who knows that she needs to get a better idea about her money. We'll pop the link for the Cash Flow CEO Accelerator too, because we do have some really great early bonuses before we open up enrollment coming soon.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing so many personal tidbits that I didn't know about you, from TV show to coming through breast cancer this last year. I love all the adversity and just to show really all that you've been through, and you're still just showing up like you are. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.